Imagine a person standing in the middle of the ocean, holding a bucket, furiously trying to empty the sea. It's almost comic. And yet, if we're honest, that person is us. We spend our days scooping and splashing, convinced that if we just work harder, plan better, control more, then finally we'll feel safe, fulfilled, in charge. Here's the paradox that begins our journey. The tighter we grip life, the more it slips through our fingers. We chase control to feel free, and then wake up one day to realize control has quietly become the walls of our prison. Let me start with an image. Picture your life as a train you've been riding for years. You know the seats, the sound of the rails, the stops where you usually get off. At first, you may have chosen this train, but after a while, something subtle happens. The train begins to feel like reality itself. You stop asking where it's going. You stop noticing you are a passenger. And then the day comes when you look out the window and think, wait, when did I get here? That question is not a crisis, it's an awakening. It's the first crack in the glass. Take charge of your life. It sounds like a slogan stitched onto a pillow or printed on the side of a motivational mug. But beneath the cliche there is a fierce, ancient truth. Because taking charge doesn't mean forcing life to obey your will like a stubborn animal. It means recognizing that your life is already being steered by something. The real question is not whether your life has a driver. The question is who or what is holding the wheel. Is it you? Or is it fear, quiet, practical, persuasive? Is it habit, wearing yesterday's clothes? Is it the invisible weight of other people's expectations? Is it that voice inside your head that speaks in the accent of your childhood? Sometimes we think we are choosing, but we are only repeating. Sometimes we think we are living, but we are only reacting. And the strangest part is how normal it feels. Autopilot is comfortable. It doesn't ask us to be brave. It asks us only to continue. You can see this in small things. The way we reach for our phone before we reach for our breath. The way we say yes when our body whispers no. The way we postpone our real lives like they're a movie we'll watch someday when we're less tired, less busy, less afraid. And we don't call it surrender. We call it being realistic. We call it adulthood. We call it how things are. But there comes a moment, sometimes gentle, sometimes a thunderclap, when something in you refuses to keep living as a background character. In your own story, you can feel it like a quiet rebellion in the chest, a restlessness that isn't anxiety, but intelligence, a grief that isn't weakness, but recognition. It says, this life is mine, and I have not been fully here. So before we talk about changing your life, we have to talk about seeing it. Before we talk about taking charge, we have to notice what has been in charge so far. Because you cannot steer a ship you haven't admitted you're sailing. You cannot wake up inside a dream unless you first suspect you are dreaming. And that suspicion, small, brave, luminous, is where taking charge truly begins. Once you suspect you've been dreaming, the world gets odd in a new way, not scary odd. More like waking up in a room you've lived in for years and suddenly seeing the dust in the sunlight. You realize that so much of what you called me was actually a collection of habits, reflexes, and borrowed sentences. You thought you were the author, but you were mostly a reciter. Think of your mind as a house with many rooms. In some rooms, you live consciously, where your values breathe, where your real loves sit like old friends. But in most rooms, the lights are off, and in darkness, anything can move the furniture. Unseen beliefs shift the couch. Old fears repaint the walls. The expectations of others hang pictures you never chose. Then, one day, you flip the switch and you can't believe how long you were walking through your own life by feel alone. This is what I mean by the unseen driver. Because life on autopilot is not empty. It's full of momentum you didn't examine. Full of patterns that were once useful and are now just familiar. Can you remember the first time you learned to please people? The first time you learned to hide anger or desire or sadness because it made the room easier to survive? Those were not moral failures, they were strategies. A child learns to adapt the way a vine learns to climb, instinctively, to reach light. But a strategy that saves you at 10 can imprison you at 30. And modern life is a master hypnotist. It doesn't wave a watch in front of your eyes. It offers notifications, deadlines, trends, endless little emergencies that keep you too busy to interrogate the bigger one. Autopilot today wears a sleek suit. It calls itself productivity. Optimization hustle. It tells you, don't worry about meaning yet. First, get through the week. Then you look up and 10 years have passed. Like a blurred highway. Here's a small story. A friend once told me about driving home from work every day. Same route, same time. One evening he arrived in his driveway and realized he couldn't recall a single turn he'd taken. The body knew, the mind was elsewhere. We laugh at that. But isn't that how many of us live our lives? We get to Friday, to the next birthday, to the next year, and wonder where the road went. The tragedy isn't that time passes. The tragedy is that we weren't actually there for it. So take charge begins by noticing the currents you've been floating in. Ask yourself, what do I do without choosing? What do I believe without questioning? Who do I become when I'm tired, threatened, or praised? What kind of life am I rehearsing over and over? These aren't accusatory questions. They're lanterns. They light up the machinery, and once you see the machinery, something extraordinary happens. You become slightly less mechanical. A sliver of space appears between stimulus and response, between the urge and your hand, between the old story and your next sentence. That sliver is freedom's doorway, not a grand doorway, a narrow one, but real. And it opens only when you look honestly at what's been driving while you slept. And in that narrow doorway, you meet a word that scares people more than death, more than failure, sometimes even more than loneliness. Responsibility. Not the kind that tastes like paperwork and pressure, but the ancient kind. Responsibility. The ability to respond. Many of us confuse responsibility with blame. We hear take responsibility for your life and think it means whipping ourselves for every scar, every detour, every mistake that wasn't even fully ours. But that is not responsibility. That is cruelty wearing a halo. Responsibility is softer and braver at once. It says, whatever happened before, this moment is mine to meet. It doesn't deny the past. It just refuses to be ruled by it. Imagine two people caught in rain. One curses the clouds, shakes a fist at the sky, recites the unfairness of weather. The other opens an umbrella, or dances, or finds shelter, or simply accepts getting wet. Both are experiencing the same rain. Only one is free inside it. Responsibility is that umbrella, not a denial of the storm, but a decision about how to stand within it. This is the pivot point of taking charge. The shift from life happens to me to life happens with me. From being the leaf in the river to remembering you also have hands that can learn to swim. And yes, sometimes the river is violent. Sometimes the currents are inherited, systemic, heartbreaking. Taking charge is not pretending you had equal control over the starting line. It's recognizing that you still have some say in the next step. A sliver, a breath, a direction. Even prisoners have an inner posture. Even the wounded can choose how to heal. Not quickly, not perfectly, but deliberately. You may notice here a subtle terror, because if you accept that your attention is yours, your choices are yours, your interpretation is yours, then you can't hide in the comforting fog of inevitability anymore. Autopilot was easy because it let you say, that's just how I am. Responsibility pulls the mask off that sentence and reveals a more honest one. That's how I've been. And if that's how you've been, it means you can be otherwise. That possibility is exhilarating and horrifying. It means the future is not guaranteed. It means you are involved. There's a line I return to when life feels heavy. You are not guilty for what your nervous system learned to do, but you are responsible for what it keeps doing now that you are awake. We could say it even simpler. You didn't choose your first thoughts, but you can choose your second. You didn't choose your earliest wounds, but you can choose not to worship them. You didn't author the weather, but you can decide what kind of person you will be in the rain. Taking charge, then, is not a clenched jaw, it's a clear eye. A willingness to stop outsourcing your life to circumstance, to mood, to history, to the opinions of people who aren't living inside your skin. It is the moment you say quietly, without drama, this is my move. And once you say that, you start to feel a new kind of power, not the power of domination, but the power of participation. Participation brings us to the next paradox. the one that separates force from mastery. You would think taking charge means tightening your grip, more discipline, more pushing, more control. But if you watch anyone who is truly skillful, a musician, a surfer, a parent, a monk, you'll see something different. Their power is not in how hard they clench, it's in how well they dance with what is. Life is a conversation between will and reality. You speak your part, reality speaks back. The trouble begins when we try to turn that conversation into a dictatorship. We shout at the world, we demand, we cling, we scheme. And the world, being the world, doesn't always comply. So we grow bitter. We call it fate. We call it betrayal. But maybe it's just physics. Maybe it's the simple truth that control without surrender is violence against life. Think of steering a boat. If you fight the ocean, you lose. Not because you're weak, but because you're misunderstanding the medium. The skilled sailor doesn't yell at the wind. They read it. They adjust the sail. They accept the current and still choose a course. That is what taking charge looks like in a real universe, not, I will force everything to happen my way, but I will work with what is, and shape what can be shaped. This is why so many people burn out when they try to take control of their life. They mistake effort for grip. They confuse willpower with war. They treat themselves like a machine that must be optimized, and then wonder why joy leaks out of the seams. But you are not a machine. You are a living ecosystem. A forest doesn't grow by straining. It grows by rooting, receiving, and reaching effort, braided with surrender. And here's the deeper layer. Surrender is not giving up your agency. Surrender is giving up your argument with reality. It is the decision to stop fighting what already is, so you can invest your energy in what can become. The moment you stop saying this shouldn't be happening, you get all that energy back. That energy becomes clarity, courage, movement. So we arrive at a strange truth. You take charge by letting go of fantasies, of rigid timelines, of the need to be liked by everyone, of the idea that life owes you a painless path. Letting go is not passivity, it is precision. It is dropping what slows you down so you can move with clean hands. Notice how this touches love and fear. Fear tells you to grip because gripping feels like survival. Love tells you to open because opening is life. But love without will can drift into chaos, and will without love becomes tyranny. So taking charge is the integration of both, a tender authority over your own life. Maybe you've felt this in relationships. The harder you try to control someone, make them love you, change them, keep them, the more the relationship suffocates. Yet when you hold firmly to your boundaries and gently to the person, love can breathe. The same is true with your own fate. Hold firmly to your direction. Hold gently to the path. We could say it this way: take charge of your effort, not your outcomes. Commit to the practice, not the guarantee. Plant the seed, tend the soil. Trust the season. The harvest comes when it comes. And strangely enough, that trust is not the opposite of taking charge. It is the most mature form of it. So how do we live this, not as a philosophy we nod at, but as a way we wake up inside Monday morning? Start where all charge begins: attention. Your attention is the steering wheel of your life. Whatever you consistently look at, listen to, feed, and repeat becomes your world. If attention is scattered, your life feels scattered. If it is devoted, your life begins to gather around something meaningful. The way iron filings arrange themselves around a magnet. Ask yourself very gently, where does my attention go when I am not choosing to worry, to comparison, to replaying old conversations, to the glow of other people's lives? Attention drifting is not a sin. It's a habit. But habits can be trained the way eyes adjust to light. Every time you return your attention to what matters, you are taking charge in the smallest, most powerful way. Then comes a word many people fear because it sounds like loneliness: boundaries. A boundary is not a wall to keep love out. It's a horizon that tells your energy where to belong. If you have no boundaries, other people's needs become your life. Other people's moods become your weather. Other people's chaos becomes your calendar. Taking charge means learning to say no without apology and yes without resentment. It means noticing what drains you, what weakens you, what makes you smaller, and protecting your life from it. The way a gardener protects seedlings from frost. And then courageous action. Not heroic action, human action, the kind that trembles a little, Because here's another quiet reality. Clarity is often born after movement, not before it. We wait to feel ready, but readiness is usually the reward for beginning. The first step is rarely confident. It is simply honest. You might be thinking, but what if I choose wrong? Let that question sit with you. How much of your life has been shaped by the fear of being wrong, by the terror of regret? And yet regret is not always a sign of failure. Sometimes regret is the fingerprint of growth. It means you became someone who could see more clearly. The only truly tragic mistake is the one you never make because you never moved. So take charge in the way a person learns to walk on ice, not by pretending it isn't slippery, but by stepping carefully, feeling your balance, falling sometimes, laughing sometimes, going anyway. Your life is not a multiple choice test. It's a path that appears as you walk it. And remember time. Time is not just hours passing. It's your life converting into memory right now. When you postpone living until some imagined future, you're trading your only currency for an IOU that might never be paid. Taking charge means refusing to live in permanent rehearsal. It means asking, if not now, when? If not this small brave act today, what larger one will I ever trust myself to make? So try this as a living practice each day. Choose one thing small, specific that aligns you with the person you want to become. One conversation you stop avoiding. One limit you set. One hour you protect. One truth you admit. You are not trying to conquer your entire destiny in a week. You are learning to be the kind of person who shows up to their own life. And that is how a life changes, not in earthquakes, but in daily, deliberate returns. And if you live like that, returning, choosing, adjusting, returning again, you start to notice something almost miraculous in its ordinariness. Your life begins to feel like it belongs to you, not because you control every event, but because you are no longer absent from the events. You're given. You are not a ghost haunting your own days. You are here. There's a quiet kind of dignity that arrives when you stop running from yourself, when you stop treating your feelings as interruptions and start treating them as information, when you stop waiting for permission to be the person you already feel pulsing inside you. It isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself on social media. It feels more like a steady flame you learn to protect from the wind. At this stage, the opening paradox returns, but in a transformed way. You don't empty the ocean with a bucket. You learn to swim. You don't demand the train stop where you want. You remember you can get off. You can change lines. You can, even if you are willing to learn, build a different track. The world still has weather. People still have their own wills. The future still has fog. But you are not begging life to be different in order to be okay. You are participating in the fog, sailing in the weather, loving without chains, moving without guarantees. And here is the final turn of the spiral. Taking charge of your life is not finally becoming someone invulnerable. It's becoming someone available. Available to reality as it is. Available to your own deepest values. Available to the moment in front of you, even when it hurts, even when it dazzles. The person who is truly in charge is not the one who never feels fear. It is the one who doesn't let fear be the author. So if you're listening to this and feeling the weight of your history, the thickness of your uncertainty, the ache of time you think you've lost, let me offer you something gentle and exact. You don't need to fix your whole life tonight. You don't need to become a new person before sunrise. You only need to take one honest responsibility for the next moment. One breath you notice fully. One choice you make deliberately. One boundary that protects your aliveness. One act that leans toward love instead of avoidance. That's it. That is the seed of charge, because life is not taken all at once. It's taken the way you take a hand in the dark, moment by moment, with presence. Let's end with a small meditation, not as an exercise, but as a way of seeing. Imagine your life as a vast night sky. Thoughts pass like clouds. Emotions flicker like weather. Circumstances come and go like seasons. And beneath all of it, steady, spacious, unhurried, is the awareness that can choose. The awareness that can return. The awareness that can steer. You are that awareness. Not as a mystical slogan, but as a fact you can test right now. You can feel it the second you stop and notice you are here. So take charge, not with clenched fists, but with open eyes, not by conquering life, but by inhabiting it, not by escaping paradox, but by walking with it. And when you forget, you will begin again. The wheel is always in front of you. The road is always now.